And we are recording.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us on our fifth of six public forums related to Lakeforest Mall. My name's Rob Robinson. I'm the long-range planning manager for the city, and I'll be moderating this session. Again, thank you for taking some time this afternoon. So what we're going to do is, just to let you know, from a Zoom perspective, the chat function is turned off. If you have a question, feel free to use the question tool. We will be tracking those. But otherwise, we're basically, because it's a small group, we're going to unmute everyone and we'll have a free flow dialogue unless it sort of gets out of control and then we have to go to raised hands. So we're going to start with everybody being unmuted and able to participate. So let's begin some of our chat. So this is the Lakeforest Mall area, including the stormwater management ponds. It's about a little over 100 acres. The interior of the site, which we typically think of as the mall, is 80 plus acres. The yellow circles where the transit center exists, and that's really more of, just a little bus station, 2 poles and a roof. The blue squares represent all the various entrances and exits from the mall. So right around the mall area, within a half mile, there's almost 7,000 dwelling units of various types: townhomes, single family homes, apartments, etc. And it's home to almost 16,000 people. On the non-residential side, we have over 1.5 million square feet of general and medical office. We also have almost 1.5 million square feet of restaurant and retail. And this is all within a half mile of that core that you saw. There's also some industrial storage and warehouse uses of almost, a little over 350,000 square feet. And that could potentially grow depending upon what happens at the old Lidos site. So as we begin our effort, we as staff, some of the stuff that we keep in the back of our mind are some projections. So right now, the city is forecast to add 20,000 new residents for almost 90,000 people in the city of Gaithersburg by 2045. And in order to meet this population growth, we're going to need, almost 7,000 to almost 10,000 additional housing units to meet that growth. And that becomes a challenge because, as many of you know, in the city of Gaithersburg, opportunities for redevelopment, aren't everywhere. There's a lot of older, stable neighborhoods that aren't going away. So not just is the population going to grow and housing to meet that, but we're also forecast to add 20,000 new jobs. So again, there's a competition for space. But as we're thinking about these jobs, we got to remember that retail is and probably will remain, and especially as you guys are already seeing with COVID, oversupplied. Retail's changing. So, it's not just a matter of putting up shopping center after shopping center. So why is all this important? Well, Lakeforest offers a very unique opportunity. So when you have, potentially 80 plus acres to redevelop, as shown up on here, you can do entirely a variety of different development patterns, from single family neighborhoods with big houses on quarter-acre lots, to suburban mixed use, to urban mixed use. This is from downtown DC, to really the extreme, New York City, dense urban mixed use. So all of these same typologies sort of work within, the same acreage that we're talking about. So the effort that we're doing, this Lakeforest Mall Master Plan, the goal for this, especially given the uncertainties of today, is really to establish a vision for and to prescribe the elements to include, or maybe more importantly, exclude from a future redevelopment plan to accommodate that vision. So where some master plans you folks may have seen, say, and on this block, it's going to have these uses at this height, at this ratio. We're really not doing a design plan for this. We're going to be more expressing concerns that come out that, hey, if there is housing, X percent must be, maybe this type of form, or, we need additional green space without determining where that green space is going to go. So we're going to ask you folks a series of 3 questions. And with that, it's really meant to spur conversation. I want to hear from everyone. We want to hear from everyone. Obviously, as we mentioned, everything's going to be, this isn't a debate. We're not out to critique one another's viewpoints. We're just out really to talk about and express ideas. So with that, Kirk, is there? an ability to show me who the attendees are? With screen sharing, I do not have that, my friend. Okay. Got it. So great, we have 6 attendees. That is fantastic. So let's kick this off. So the first question that I have for the group is, which of the following do you value most for a Lake Forest redevelopment? Increased housing opportunities, increased employment opportunities, to establish connectivity with and amenities for the surrounding area and neighborhoods? Or from your guys' perspective, is there some other facet that you think should be the most important component to a Lake Forest redevelopment? And with that, I am opening it up to the floor. So again, with only 6 of us, feel free to chime in. If you want to use your raised hand thing to, I'm happy to call on you, but otherwise, let's go ahead and get this started.
Hi, this is Levita. Can you hear me?
Yes, Levita, welcome.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
hey, real fast before we go, just because we're coming here, if the first time you talk, if you could just introduce yourself and let us know, are you in the city? Are you in the county? What sort of relationship you have to Lake Forest? That would be great.
Yes, I have been a resident of the county for about over 20 years now. I'm a retired military. I have a rental property and I also own a home in Montgomery. My question is probably towards, the connectivity. That's what I value the most, and not just connectivity, but also the amenities.
Okay.
Right now, when you want to go to for a nice restaurant, you have to go either Rockville or Washington D.C. and even Rio. So so that's what I would like to see within the Lake Forest Mall development.
Great. Anybody else?
My interest, this is Linda Moore. I'm a Montgomery Village resident of 18 or 19 years.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. One of the things, and I thought that what we did for the questionnaire, I thought that was very good and useful. I was thinking more when I looked at this, and I've looked at it, I pass it almost every day, that it be thematic in a sense, like where green things take off, where chargers and other things would be, but focused in a green theme, but of course include housing and employment and other amenities.
Okay. Cool. All right, there's 4 others of you. I want to hear from everyone before we start doing a little bit of deeper dive.
My name is Ronnie Aquino. I lived in the area for about 33 years, barring a 10-year stint. I live here in the Gaithersburg. Actually, it's about 5 minutes from Lake Forest itself. I kind of like to echo what the other 2 individuals said as well. Is right now, for any type of, I guess you want to call it entertainment in general, you do have to go out. The closest areas are what, Kentlands or the Rio area, and also, and I'm sure you've probably heard this next opinion a lot, it's kind of countered what you were asking, the housing opportunities, the increase in human traffic and literal traffic as well is kind of, I feel like having connectivity in the area would probably be the least detrimental in terms of just having periodic influx as opposed to constant movement of people who live there. And so, yeah, just in general, Gaithersburg just kind of feels like you just have to go kind of far out of the way to actually do anything of value. And I know obviously this area is more catered towards families and whatnot, but even starting families as well too don't necessarily want to have to commute 20, 30 minutes to entertain themselves and their children as well too.
Okay. Anybody else?
This is Sheree. I don't have anything else to add. I think my colleagues on this call pretty much said it all. You know, just to travel far to have any kind of entertainment or to do anything really. Germantown, Rockville, Bethesda, DC. It's just it's a plus and a minus that it is more residential, but it'd be nice to have something nearby. And also, I am very interested in more about the property side of things, townhouses, condos. I imagine this, and I'm not trying to insult, but something closer to the Rio and that kind of development would be, I would think, desired for this area.
Okay. Claire or Karine, any thoughts?
This is Karine. I lived in Gaithersburg pretty much my whole life for 30 years. Yeah, I agree with everyone else about the entertainment and having to go elsewhere for it. It'd be good to have something local and close by, since I only live like 5 minutes from Lakeforest Mall and grew up in that area. So still would like some retail and everything as well. But I echo what everyone else pretty much said.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Claire, and I also would like to see some connectivity and some activities for young children as well. There's really nothing to do for young children, it seems. And we do have the pool, we do have the skate park, but maybe a little bit more activity for kids and families.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it's good to know that I have a panel that for the most part is in agreement, so that'll help as we move along. So I'd like to do a little bit of deeper dive. So the conversations was, you know, establish connectivity with the surrounding area is important, which is great. And you guys were speaking of, you know, the amenities. I'd like to do, explore a little bit more. What exactly are you guys thinking as it comes to amenities? That can go soup to nuts. Are we talking opportunities? Somebody had mentioned restaurants. Are we talking about potentially parks or green space? Are there other amenities, you know, sort of like the question on here? Is this, you know, civic venues, you know, so maybe not necessarily, you know, an open lawn area, but is it something else, or is it, you know, some sort of structure? So again, if it sounds like universally the panel agrees that there needs to be something here that provides more than just, you know, a housing and a Foot Locker. But I want to explore with you guys what exactly, you know, what are the components of this something else?
I did have a quick, somewhat related question. I don't know if you're going to cover this later in the presentation. I guess it goes along with the connectivity and stuff. Do you plan on covering how the immediate surrounding area around Lakeforest is going to be handled or discussed, or is that being taken into consideration at all, knowing that it is?
So what I can express right now is we've acknowledged to the council that, you know, every place, you know, needs to be looked at. But from the viewpoint for a number of factors, Lakeforest, as it's, you know, the you know, properties that comprise it are its own entity, and we think we sort of need to have that master plan in place before we really begin looking at all the surrounding areas. Plus, my friend, some of the areas, you know, are in the county, so we don't have any purview. So we did have a focus group meeting with Montgomery Planning and the Montgomery Village Foundation to sort of get their thoughts about, you know, their specific master plan and where they're going and how Lakeforest could relate to that. So I want to let everybody know, yes, we will be, you know, thinking about everything. We will be eventually looking at everything. But right now, we really think that to get the whole ball rolling in this little sub-region, it all hinges upon what we end up planning here at Lakeforest Mall. Does that help, Ronnie?
Yeah, so just kind of approach this kind of more like as in a vacuum, if you will, for the initial stage.
In a sense, but this is why, again, where the question comes from. If we hear from this panel, as we've heard from some other focus groups, or for some other members of focus groups, you know, the connectivity standpoint is sort of, you know, important, and relating and potentially providing something that's not found in the immediate area. So while geographically we may be looking at this in a vacuum, you know, from a master planning and what we're trying to glean from these panels isn't limited to solely, you know, just being insular looking for the mall.
Okay.
So again, going back, what the question was is, so we've talked about all these various amenities. I'd like to explore, you know, what are you guys thinking of the amenities? Is it solely related to like restaurants, or is it civic uses, or is it open space, or is it more formalized parks or recreational areas? What are the thoughts of the group?
Yeah, this is Levita again. It would be nice to have a combination of both, of like an open green park area with restaurants and possible like some parks that would be good for children and teenagers.
Okay.
Similar to kind of like if you go to North Harbor or Rios or on the other side of Rios when they did that development down there,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of sort of something like that. I know that the housing will also increase, and then it will also increase the employment opportunities. But I don't like to see that it's going to be so like the housing is so packed in that area because we already have a lot of you know like the Hidden Creek is already close enough in there, and then there's a lot of apartments already in there, and I just want to make sure that there's going to be a lot of venues for people, with something to do, since it's going to increase probably the population in the area.
So Levita, if I can paraphrase what you're saying, if you're looking at, question one, the least amount of space, if we're talking that 80 acres, should be devoted to housing. You acknowledge that maybe there should be some housing or there will be some housing, but it really shouldn't be the primary focus of a redevelopment, that the redevelopment should be bringing in these other things, whether it's jobs or parks or activities or something else. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and at least a balance if they do build some housing opportunities. One good example was when they were developing Hidden Creek, which is only about half a mile from Lakeforest. Those houses and townhouses in that area. When I bought a townhouse down there, we were told that there's going to be parks and restaurants and stores, but then in the end, they started building condominiums and apartments in the complex, and gone are the entertainment. So I hope it doesn't happen to Lake Forest when it becomes more too congested with housing development instead of, like I said, amenities, for us to connect with other people.
Gotcha. Anybody else have any thoughts about this?
With amenities, I kind of like to see something possibly capitalize on the actual name of Lake Forest. And I know I want to say on the side facing 355, you have the kind of more water area. So, maybe make it like a hybrid green space with some retail. I'm personally, I'm against housing 100% there, just because right up the street, the Montgomery Village golf course is being constructed for that. You have the whole Spectrum area and the whole area behind that. I think the county's already selected areas for housing. I don't think that should become that, but I think there should be, I think what she was saying, a green space, because there already is some, I don't want to use the term infrastructure, but there's kind of some natural elements there already. But then, put a little bit of retail in there, like a mini Crown, if you will.
So Ronnie, building off on this, so as we sort of mentioned, sort of 80 acres. Okay, say we don't, have, either minimize or have no housing here. What other things, 80 acres is a lot of space for when you're talking about just a little bit of retail and some parks. What other things, do you see this then, potentially opening up employment opportunities? Should we be looking at different sectors? Traditionally here in the city of Gaithersburg, mixed use is for the most part, by and large, meant, retail and residential. Is it time to look beyond that? What are your thoughts on, again, how would you fill up 80 acres if you don't want to do housing?
So somewhat related, I guess, personally for me, I think it would be dependent on what the old Lido site across the street would be utilized for. If that winds up being another large scale employer and doesn't get split up, then I would say, increase the retail. I mean, Crown, if you see, for the most part, is doing fairly well, and I'm not sure what the exact acreage is there, but I think I echo what everyone else said. I think higher end or maybe upscale is too strong of a word.
I know where you're going. Retail. No, I understand. So Just
would be
for
preferred.
context, the commercial core of Crown in Neighborhood 1, where the grocery store is and all of that, even with the apartments, that's only about 33 acres.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm at a loss for how to fill the remaining space
Yeah,
right now.
that's fine, my friend. This is why we do the panels. It's only meant to spur
Yeah.
thought and take in input. So that's fine. If we had all the answers, you know, this process would have gone a lot faster. So no, that's great. So Corrine, Sherry, or Claire, any thoughts on where the discussion is so far or what we're talking about?
This is Linda. What I liked the idea of a civic venue, and I recognize that there are hotels in the area that actually house or locate a lot of events, federal meetings, and that kind of thing. And with the civic venue, it could be a possibility to tie into the larger employers and the employers that hopefully will be growing through the pharmaceutical and all that area. Might be a good place to have that kind of venue and have the engagement of the industries that are in the area.
So Linda, with this venue, you mentioned, you know, biotech, and that's come up a lot with some of the other groups. Do you see an opportunity to locate some of those uses on this site as part of a redevelopment?
Well, yeah, because for me, it ties into what I was saying about the theme, the whole theme of that area being green or biotech, or it, you know, up. I guess just the growth of what would be educational, just the next steps and where we're going in the community and in the growth of the country, you know, in jobs, what the industry areas are.
Great. So while I have you, what are your thoughts on housing? So I've heard from two of your co-panelists here. That's one thinks, you know, it should be minimum and one thinks there should be none. Do you have any thoughts on housing on this site?
Yeah, as being someone who feels the ground, the dirt movers as I sit, I'm probably not a good person to ask about that.
Everybody's a good person to
I'm
ask.
being significantly impacted because the first phase is right behind me. So I'm feeling that. But in terms of housing, just gotta, for me, I go straight to the transportation because we have transportation issues, and the new housing that's coming up in some of the places that it could be developed are going to create a lot of problems for people moving around. But that's also one of the things that could be a part of the civic activity and the connectivity for people, especially aging adults, might be able to plug into some kind of way. Like that might be a stop or a place for people gathering that are going to use other types of transportation.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Corrine or Claire, any thoughts before I bring up some other points building off this conversation?
Yeah, this is Claire, and I would like it to be as green as possible. I wouldn't mind seeing, I think you mentioned something like a outdoor arena, a place that they could have shows or bands or, you know, puppet shows for kids or educational shows would be nice. I would prefer not to see any more housing there.
Okay.
I think it's getting congested enough. It would also be nice if it had easy access. I mean, you've got Asbury Methodist right there, and it'd be nice for those seniors to be able to also enjoy some green space and activities.
Good, good. Corrine, any thoughts?
Sure, just look at what everyone else is saying, pretty much. Not to, I guess, push into the housing. If it is, it'd be very limited just because, yeah, we're already congested. But I mean, even maybe possible if you're looking to fill up the 80 acres. I know right now it doesn't make sense due to COVID and people working from home, but down the road, maybe that can just be like other office buildings or opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I thought. I know it doesn't really help right now since everyone's working from home, but if you're looking to fill up space instead of putting housing, maybe look at office buildings so people can look into that. Because especially if we make it more, you know, retail or keep it retail and restaurants, you know, that'll be more attractive for companies maybe want to work there so they can just walk to go get lunch or happy hour or dinner or whatnot. So.
Excellent. Those were great comments. So I want to build off on some of the things that were said, just to take a little bit deeper dive. So it sounds like, again, the panel's really much unified in what they're thinking, you know, the construct is. So when we talk about these amenities, I've heard people mention seniors, I've heard people mention families. So when we start talking about restaurants or non-residential uses, should really the emphasis be to try to target a wide spectrum of users? Or, you know, should there a lot of the emphasis be on, you know, families, or should it be on the retirees because of Asbury? So that's one thing. The other thing is the transportation that was brought up. So as I mentioned, you know, there's an existing transit center there, and it serves, you know, 7 ride-on routes. It really links, you know, up county with down county. It gets, you know, outside of COVID, you know, it has a lot of heavy use. There's a lot of people who get on and get off at Lakeforest Mall. Plus, it's meant to be a stop for the future Maryland 355 bus rapid transit system.
Mm-hmm.
So my other question related to transportation is, right now, as I mentioned, you know, it's sort of just, you know, a glorified bus stop. Should it become something more vigorous, you know, more of an actual, you know, center per se, and integrate into the development? Or should it be something, you know, that's sort of kept standalone and you know, not in a denigrating way, but pushed off to the side, you know, not necessarily integrated in this active redevelopment that you guys are thinking? So again, 2 questions. You know, as we look at, you know, these restaurants and these other activity opportunities, should it really be geared towards, you know, 1 or 2 specific segments of the population, or should it be broad reaching? And what are your thoughts on the transit center? This is a tough one, so take your time.
This is Claire.
Go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Claire, and then we'll move on. We'll go to the next.
I don't, it doesn't seem fair to only gear it towards one segment. It seems like it should have multi-use by the residents. As far as the transit goes, I guess one of my concerns is the safety, because it just seems like there's some crime in that area. And I know that was there a shooting at that bus stop before. So I'm not sure. It just makes me a little uncomfortable about making that a huge transit transfer place. Regardless of what we do with Lakeforest, I have concerns about that area.
Okay.
I also, this is Sheree, I also second Claire's intuition. I think the bigger the transit station, the more you're inviting other activities into the area. And so if you want to keep it at a certain level of safety and, you know, keep the crime levels low, you have to be aware that if you do have something that's a large like metro station, it does become more metropolitan and invites other unwanted or even non-locals into the area. So I think that we have to be careful with, you know, how large of a transit, if we decide to go that route, how large you want it to be. So, and I think that might be tied to, you know, what exactly we're going to put in this development. If it's more restaurants, that's more local. So I think that, you know, the transit shouldn't be that large. If we're going to put like a, you know, concert venue, then it might be larger and attract more attention and more people. So, you know, if we do that, there is going to be more transit issues and then more traffic, and, you know, it all goes together. So I just want to throw that out there.
No, that's great. And Sheree, I just want to build up on something you said. So just from a perception wise, do you think part of the safety issue associated with the transit center is because it is so isolated and, you know, only deals with certain things? So what I'm sort of asking is, can your concerns and Claire's concerns about transit as it relates to safety be offset by what you put around it? You know, if there's more activity and not just 9 to 5 activity, but more activity overall, do you feel that potentially can be a deterrent to crime?
This is Sheree again. I think that, you know, I think there is some truth to that statement. You know, for example, if you put like, you know, a large, like a Verizon center or something large here, you're obviously going to be attracting more people into the area. So I think it just depends on what you put around the transit center that determines the traffic and the type of people that are going to be coming into the area for whatever reason, entertainment, eating, etc. So there's a correlation.
Great. So anybody else, what we're asking about is the transit center and, you know, these non-residential uses, you know, who should they be targeting?
Well, this is Linda. I was not thinking so much about a transit center. I was thinking more about where transportation is going and how it might facilitate that, whether it's autonomous vehicles or monorails or some of the other things that have been talked about and looked at in the county as it relates to transportation. And just even having, as many of you probably noticed, that there are charging centers in the malls and starting to be charging centers at the grocery store. Just like I said, when I initially introduced myself, I've been thinking about it, but kind of thinking about it in a futuristic, I guess that's
No, that's great. I mean, again, we're talking about the future of Lakeforest. We don't need to look at So as part of this, Linda, do you believe there should be enhanced bicycle and pedestrian facilities? So to make walking and biking easier and safer, does that fit into your larger view?
It does, and it doesn't. It does because it makes sense. It doesn't because, well, it makes sense because people are doing more of it. I'm not sure how much that's going to grow, but well, on that, I just want to say it's interesting to me in most plans that the accommodations for cycling is like way huger than I see it happening, and even projecting it into the future unless somebody comes along and says that we can't have cars at all. So I think that's one I've just been watching to see where it goes, because I'm not totally getting it.
That's totally fair. You are not alone, my friend. We hear that from a lot of people. So anyone else have any thoughts on this?
So I'm going to go a little bit against the grain here. I agree with what everyone says about, obviously there is a rather somewhat of seedy element in that area, but love it or hate it, that transportation area it's ingrained in the local transportation culture, if you will. It's, you know, unless you plan on building a whole new center somewhere else, I think we're kind of, I don't want to say stuck with it, but I would say we should actually expand it. Reason being, to be quite frank, I think the majority of people who use that transportation hub maybe aren't in more professional occupations. I think of the other transportation center over off Quince Orchard, right next to 270, which I think more traditional professional individuals park there and use a you know, because the transportation there is geared towards, you know, shuttling people towards, you know, larger business areas. And I think if we expanded that here and encouraged, so I'll use myself as an example. I work right off of Shady Grove Road in the kind of big business park area. If I lived, let's say in well, let's just pretend, you know, further away, if I could park somewhere knowing, you know, in a safer area that's geared, and I know there's other professionals like myself that also use that transportation, I know that in general, the reality is obviously that would attract more of a positive police presence and whatnot. And so Actually, and for example, the one off of Quince Orchard Road, I actually have used that in the past to go to BWI because there's transportation there that when I can't get someone to drive me. So I think it's more, let's attract. I can't think of a positive way of saying this, a higher echelon of commuters, if you will. And I think that
also, Ronnie, are you saying that potentially this could be something that's used as a tool, not only to attract a different ridership demographic, but do you feel it could attract the employment opportunities? So somebody seeking a site to center their jobs, would this be something that may sell Lakeforest redevelopment as a place to relocate or to locate?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's just say I worked over at Pike and Rose. If I knew for a fact that I could park over at Lakeforest and there was some type of transportation that would take me immediately there and sending back, I would absolutely do that. And in lieu of driving over there and dealing with the traffic, knowing very well, it's I think there is some type of program like that. I think I don't know what they're called exactly. I know off of the one in Germantown, I think they do shuttle people to like kind of bigger areas.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was something like that, I think that would encourage, like you were saying, yeah, a different demographic of commuter, I think would I guess bring more attention to the area, which in turn would kind of help keep down, some of the current issues that are arising there.
Okay.
Can I speak to Ronnie's point, which I didn't consider until you mentioned it, about the ridership demographic? So I think that if that is the train of thought, then it might be worth considering having more property developments for this demographic in that area, or considering especially if they're going to be using this transit system, it would probably go hand in hand to think about that in terms of, townhouses, condos, not to take up most of the 80 acres, but at least consider that if that's something we want to, push for in terms of having more transportation in that area.
So what I'm hearing from the group is, again, if we have this enhanced transit center, not just a glorified bus stop, but an actual, transit center, quote unquote, not knowing, all the nuances of what that entails, that it could potentially, bring in some employers who may want to locate to this redevelopment to leverage that. And that some housing, may make sense then to also leverage that. So we're beginning to paint, a bit of a holistic picture. So we're sort of then promoting the live where you work sort of aspect. Is this, am I sort of capturing now the progression of our conversation?
Not from my perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the same as well, at least to the housing part. I think what I'm saying is purely subjective. It's just what I've heard. So I don't know if there's any surveys. From what I've heard, people who live in, more recently built developments, obviously are a little bit more expensive, tend to not like having transportation hubs that are more than just the residents there. I look at King Farm, for example, has Shady Grove next door. However, a lot of the commuters there have shuttle programs to take people there, and so they're not immediately dealing with the ramifications of the transportation hub being there. So okay. I think that's kind of where, again, it's purely opinions I've heard from other people who live in newer areas and have had stuff that's nowhere, maybe 3 times as far as the transportation hub is to Lakeforest itself, and still they feel that's too close.
Okay, no, that's fair. Again, the purpose of this is to get your viewpoint, not try to sway you in any one way. So again, if for the most part the discussion is minimizing or not having any housing, but I still want to make sure that we're clear on that. These other things that we want to have in here. So again, I've heard some civic venues, obviously parks. I've heard and some of these that appeal to multiple demographics. In the age structure, from families to retirees, everything else. We've heard some restaurants. Do you see, we've talked about some retail. Do you see this as, for lack of a better term, destination retail? Like you expect somebody to drive down from Germantown to shop here? Or do you view the scale of the retail here really to be neighborhood in scale? So it's really more to support the immediate area. So if you had to think of it in terms of stuff, do you see it being a, local deli or a Foot Locker? What type of retail are you guys thinking about?
This is Claire. I'd like for it to meet more of the local needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I also would like to kind of reiterate what Ronnie said at the beginning, you know, building off of the element that's there, the name Lakeforest. It would be nice to have kind of fountains or some water or something that draws people to it. I mean, you know, I know they redid in Old Town that plaza by the train station, and you just don't see, you know, it just isn't that attractive to be up there. And I think about kids playing or people just strolling about, enjoying, you know, green space. And I've been a resident of Gaithersburg since '89, and it just seems like that was always nice. I mean, our city, you know, we have the tree as our logo, and it just feels like green space is disappearing.
Gotcha. So Claire, some of the other groups that we spoke to, if this captures sort of where you're going, have described that a Lake Forest redevelopment should have a unique sense of place, that it shouldn't necessarily look or feel like some cookie cutter thing, that it should, you know, be this, have this inherent attractiveness that makes it appealing to multiple groups. Is that sort of fair to say what you're trying to capture?
Yes. Yes, you know, I just enjoy it when you see people out riding bikes with their kids, walking their dogs, you know, just picnicking. And I think Gaithersburg has been wonderful about providing educational opportunities for kids. You know, our son grew up in Gaithersburg sports and all that stuff, and it just kind of feels like it's slipping away. And I know, you know, and that's irrespective of COVID. But it would just be nice to have a nice place for, you know, activities for families and such.
Great. Anybody else? We're talking about a lot of different things, so I know you have to have thoughts about something.
I'm kind of glad that she just brought up Old Town. So my understanding is even pre-COVID, those two apartment complexes that were built up on both sides of the tracks have never even reached full occupancy, and you know they've never. And from the few people I spoke with that live there, almost everyone exclusively lives there out of necessity, not out of desire. And so I feel maybe not to such an extent, but I feel like that would happen as well if something like that were to pop up in Lake Forest as well. Yeah, just old. I guess I would consider Old Town almost like a failed experiment. With those, yeah, and they're just huge monstrosities, quite frankly, that block off the horizon, pretty much no matter where you stand off of Diamond Avenue. And so, yeah, I think you get a similar effect from building housing on the Lake Forest property.
Okay.
I kind of agree with Ronnie there with what happened with where the train tracks is there, all those, because they also, again, failed to attract vendors or companies, you know, and I hope, you know, it doesn't repeat with Lake Forest. You know, I think if we're able to attract young professionals, that would kind of increase the value of the place, because you know young professionals can also have, you know, like young families. So if we're able to have the amenities that kind of sort of attract those, I think that would be great for Lake Forest.
So Levita, building off that, the amenities that you speak of, so we've talked about, you know, potentially a venue, we've talked about some parks, we've talked about some restaurants. What other amenities are there that, in your opinion, attract, you know, young professionals or young families?
You know, I think like boutiques would be good. And if you're going to have restaurant, upscale restaurant, not just, we already have a lot of fast food in the areas. A lot, I mean, Lake Forest is surrounded with shopping centers. So, I mean, small shopping centers where there's already a lot of fast food, you know. So if you could attract boutiques right now, if you want to go shopping, well, we are close to like the the outlet. So I guess
Mhm.
it's really not that bad, but maybe some boutiques. So you don't have to go to, uh, we don't have to drive all the way to Clarksburg or even Germantown for some of those stores, like Targets and stuff like that. Um, Although I don't mind, it's really not that far. So I think for me, my main is like upscale restaurant. That's
Gotcha.
something like you have to go to DC to get, you know, to go to a nice restaurant right now.
So if this helps the panel, what we've heard from some other focus groups in this discussion of, what type of retail or whatever, some people have used the term experiential. So what they're looking at is, again, not another, sneaker store, but something that's a little bit more that helps create a climate of activity or vibrancy. So if it's, restaurants with outdoor seating, even outside of COVID, or some of those stores like Hot Pots where you can do classes and you can get together and, learn art or have art and wine nights. So what the description was is, again, something that's more than just going to some place where you could order it off Amazon. Are there any thoughts from the group related to that aspect?
So I guess I fall under that category of young professional. And I agree with what everyone was saying is, we don't really want cookie cutter, something maybe higher in boutique. This may be part of a longer conversation, probably involves more so the county than Gaithersburg, but I know breweries or even I guess they're called tasting rooms, are kind of more of a popular thing. I think of Downtown Crown Beer and Wine. I think it's literally called Crown Beer and Wine. Is a great example. It does great. It gets a lot of, pre-COVID, a lot of post happy hour people, and then regular evening clientele. I'd find myself going there a lot, but mainly because that is the closest place to me. Kentlands is geared a little bit older. There is opportunity for people in their 30s, but it is kind of more, to be quite honest, more catered towards those in the 50s and beyond. So something like that would keep me, after work, stay there, and then even on the weekends go there. Yeah, so it'd be maybe higher end restaurants. Local boutique businesses, if you will, and when for entertainment, obviously alcohol. I know that's a longer conversation with regulations, with city,
No, but
county.
that's great, Ronnie, because that's sort of trying to build what taps into sort of what I'm describing. Because again, a lot of groups in this panel may feel the same way. I'm not here to put words in your mouth, but believes that a lot of these uses should be more than just drive up, park, go in, get your item, pay for your item, then leave. They wanted to see stuff here that's going to keep people, walking around and doing more shopping and getting together with friends or family. So I just want to make sure, if that's sort of, the vision of this panel also, we want to make sure we're clear on capturing that. As opposed to, and again, there's nothing wrong if you go, I want to see a Target and I want to have, a large grocery store, that's just as valid as the other side. I'm just trying to get a sense of where everybody's sort of what they're thinking for Lakeforest.
This is Claire. Is anybody familiar with that brick walkway with the water and all the art stuff in Frederick?
Yes. Yes, I was thinking about that. Did you mention?
It's been bothering me. I kept thinking the whole call, like there's something I know I like and I couldn't think of it.
Yeah.
But that is really nice. And that just, is a way to showcase local artists. And was so pleasant just to stroll along there. And, I would encourage the city planners, if you could go up to Frederick and take a look at that.
Claire, are you talking about the Carroll Creek Promenade?
Yes. Yes. Something like that, I think, would be really nice as part of that 80 acres.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's like a combination of everything. You have the restaurant there, you have the boardwalk in there that you can walk around, and young adults and kids alike,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of
Even for
interesting,
elder,
fun things.
even for elderly. Yes, it would be a great,
It titillates the senses.
Mhm.
Cool.
So I'm drinking a lot of my wallet up there too as well.
I think we all have, Ronnie. You're not alone there, my friend. especially when they used to have the beer festivals in the fall and spring.
Yeah.
Before we move on to question 2, so is there any other thoughts related to this first question? The macro level concepts about what a redevelopment should have. Again, we've talked about open space. We've talked about the appropriateness of residential. We've talked about, what type of potential retail. We've talked about, we've touched on that, potentially, biotech or something. There could be some other sectors that have a presence here. We've talked about maybe a venue. We've talked about the transit center. So before we move on to the second question, again, folks, anything else we've missed or anything else you want to add?
This is Karine. I probably just wanted to echo kind of some of the stuff that other folks said about like what Ron said about the brewery or their tasting room. I'm in my 30s too, and there are times where friends come over or they're coming from out of town, and you don't want to go all the way to Bethesda or to get a good happy hour. So just have something local that I just can go 5 minutes and then come back. And then as well as for the boutiques too, for the retail, we have Montgomery Mall. So we can go there for shopping, or Clarksburg. So if we local supports small business, that would be good. And then possibly even put in like a grocery store, because I feel like you can never have enough of those. So
gotcha. Great. So anybody else before we move on to question 2?
I just want to echo that the grocery store. I've heard a lot of lamenting about the loss of Trader Joe's right across the street.
Oh, that's painful.
And,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so having to drive to Darnestown, which is getting all that business instead. Just kind of one of those. I guess Trader Joe's would fall under that category, a little bit upper scale grocery store. Harris Teeter, Wegmans, that kind of thing. I think they're all doing well in Germantown and in Crown as well.
Yep, I agree.
Me
Great.
too.
All right, so the second question, folks, takes a little bit different spin and is somewhat reflective of the times that we're in. So we've talked about a bunch of different things. We've touched on that, in many ways, this should be appealing to multiple age groups, but specifically in what ways can a Lakeforest redevelopment support social equity, diversity, and sustainability efforts? And, part of the reason we ask this is, Gaithersburg is an incredibly diverse community, both culturally, economically, across all facets. So again, if we're doing a redevelopment, what can we do to make this, what it says, support equity and diversity?
Well, we can have those cultural affairs, like what they do in Washington, D.C. Especially Gaithersburg is such a diversified, like there's so many culture in there. We could have one of those, a taste of Gaithersburg or something.
So
Where all
Lavita,
the vendors, yeah.
So does that fit into what your comments were about, having additional open space? I guess, so that means,
Yes.
Open space where you could actually conduct these festivals?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? And believe me, I know this is a tough one. It's more esoteric, but you guys have touched on a lot of things. So I just want to make sure we create that nexus between some of your other thoughts and some of these concepts.
Well, this is Linda. I, again, will just raise my little flag for the sustainability and green focused development for the area. So I still think that's important.
Okay, great. So I think maybe to help spur this along, when we were talking about, let's get off residential. We're really not going to focus on that because the panel, by and large, has, said that shouldn't be a really important focus of this. So let's go to the non-residential uses. So when we're talking about employment, should we be working to expand the type of employers that are coming in? So again, we asked the question, will the transit center potentially help businesses decide to relocate here? We've talked about restaurants, things like that, but should there be some other uses? So where I'm going with this is, if we, just focus it on neighborhood scaled retail and restaurants, we're basically just talking about a collection of minimum wage jobs. So, should Lakeforest redevelopment strive to, create a climate that has a greater variety of jobs. Ronnie had mentioned, that the transit center, may bring in some, white collar users. Well, where are those white collar users going to work? Are they working in the surrounding area, or do you see job opportunities opening up here in a Lakeforest redevelopment to serve those? So again, as it relates to, the equity and diversity, it's really, should we be hitching all of our wagons to a certain, profile of jobs, or should we really try to work to get as diverse as possible in job opportunities?
I feel we probably should have, I think someone mentioned earlier, having some type of, office building or, business park.
Okay.
I think we should kind of cater more towards, biotech and STEM in general. I'm in telecommunications. I'm a product manager. If this area already has that kind of stuff, but there's still a lot of people that have to commute down to maybe as Bethesda. Realistically, a lot more things are over there. And so I think that would kind of, same thing, the white collar employee would have more of the disposable income to spend at some of these areas, and in turn will come here on their off time and so on. And then I know, for example, like the Amazon bid, I think it was like 2 years ago when that was going on. Obviously, we can't devote the whole area to something of that scale, but I think showing that that's the type of corporation that we're looking for would kind of do well to say, hey, we wanted something like Amazon, that one didn't work out, but we have on a smaller scale, we can set up infrastructure for, software development company, for a biotech company, something along those lines.
Oh, very cool. Good. Anybody else?
This is Claire. I guess I'm a little confused. Would that kind of business attract the locals to work there? Because it seems like a lot of people that were talking about working there beyond minimum wage jobs, are they really going to take the subway to Shady Grove and then wait for a bus and come out there? Or is that business going to have a shuttle that's going to run back and forth? I just don't see where that's going to attract the higher wage people to commute to that particular transit station.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. And again, we're not necessarily saying, everybody has to go through the transit station. We're trying to figure out, is there the ability to introduce a variety of scaled of jobs on the site? So again, as within a mile of Lakeforest Mall, there is tons of housing of all, strata. So there are plenty of white collar workers, within a 10-minute drive of Lakeforest Mall. Right now, there's no necessarily white collar jobs at Lakeforest Mall for them to drive to. So it's really exploring, is there opportunities to do more on this site?
If we could attract corporations that, even if it's just offices for them, or headquarters, they don't really need that big of a space, like maybe some high-rise offices. That would be great. That would attract young adults, especially if we could enhance the transportation in the area. It's similar to like what's happening if you go to around Tyson, and now it's going or even Dallas, Virginia, where they were building they just built the train or the metro station, all going all the way to, I believe, Chantilly. And now that's where all the companies now are going. And it has attracted a lot of high-paying jobs, and like young adults working that way, because it has all the amenities that they needed.
Yeah, and it would be nice to have a white collar type environment, young professionals and vibrant, and people that want to work there, and it would be nice for a tax base, I assume.
Corinne,
Yes.
did I see your hand up at one point, or see you unmute at one point?
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say even too, maybe like, I know we said like biotech, pharmaceutical, but even maybe just like urgent cares. or like some sort of like outpatient. You know, I know there's Shady Grove and then there's the Holy Cross in Germantown, but and I know in Muddy Branch there's a Right Time, but maybe that might be convenient for folks, so we don't have to. It's just literally in our backyard. We could just go there. Not like the other ones are far, but could be a good opportunity, and maybe so.
So again, you're saying that you potentially another sector to explore would be the medical. I mean, albeit, you know, we have the large Kaiser Permanente, you know, just on the other side of 355 near Watkins Mill, but that's, you know, a standalone. I think you're talking about a variety of different smaller scale medical uses. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that. Not saying it has to be anything big, but just like a walk-in or something. Just
Okay.
Possible. Just throwing it out there.
No, that's the whole purpose of these forums is to have people throw stuff out. That's what we want to hear. So anyone else? As I said, I knew this is sort of a toughie because, you know, there's not like you go to the social equity store and go, oh, hey, if you build this, you know, you're done. Again, it's just making sure that we explore these various facets. Do they help achieve other goals outside of just a tax base?
So this is Shuri. You know, I think of, you know, I've been on business trips to, you know, Seattle, where they have a huge, you know, it's so colorful and beautiful in terms of the people and also the diversity there. And the thing that I noticed that I didn't even expect was they did have, you know, Microsoft, something along that, you know, like we've been talking about, some kind of tech giant or some kind of biotech to attract like young professionals, and also a more diverse set of, you know, employers and also, you know, workers into this area. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand. You know, if you do have a more tech-based company, that normally brings along more diverse demographics of professionals. And then also with that, you know, comes more, you know, in terms of entertainment and restaurants. And I think that all kind of goes hand in hand. So if we do decide to do something more tech-based, I think that will kind of fall in line. People will naturally want to go to, it should bring in more restaurants because these young professionals are going to want to go somewhere to eat, and that might, you know, bring in more upscale, you know, ventures, so to speak. So I like the idea, you know, being a young professional as well and being kind of a aspiring techie. I think that would help to bring young folks more diversity, more sense of entertainment and culture to the area.
So to paraphrase, Sherry, you're saying this is all, you got to take a holistic vision, that all these diverse opportunities and all help feed each other to stay vibrant. Is that safe to say?
Yes, I think, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Great.
There's
Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a question that I have because it ties into redevelopment of existing space and movement. And when we talk about new sectors, I have wondered why Marriott moved from North Bethesda to Upper Rockville, I guess. Because that's part of what we're talking about, attracting. And also, one of the things that I hear so often in community meetings in this area is talking about, and I know we haven't been talking about it, but talking about housing and talking about affordability and how to include what are called essential workers in this whole development, in any kind of development consideration.
No, thank you, Linda. And again, part of the reason I've sort of been, you know, downplaying the residential aspect, I'm always happy to, you know, to have this discussion was, for the most part, the panel said, you know, housing shouldn't really be a main focus of this site. But again, if the discussion is if there is some housing, obviously a theme that we've consistently heard across the board is housing affordability. Not necessarily affordable housing, which is regulated under the code, but making sure there's a variety of housing that, you know, is affordable to multiple groups in order to foster, you know, a diversity in residency.
I think that if we this is Lavita. I think that if we bring in like entertainment, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem with all those housing where the train tracks is. I mean, there's nothing in there for young adults. That's why that never they have a hard time you know, populating all those high-rise condos and townhouses down there, because there is really nothing in there. And then not to mention um, Shady Grove, where the transportation is far out. So but whereas when they built the Fields Road, you know, where across from Rios down there, I mean, you could see how fast they were able to populate those places with not only young adults, but even couples, retirees, and you know, that are just want an easy living where everything is so easy, you know, easy accessible, you know, accessible to everyone.
Yeah, Lavita, I think that ties into what Cherie and Karine said, that you have to have, you know, all these other things that make a place attractive. You can't just, you know, put in one use.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, I have a question, and I apologize to the group that I'm not up on this. What's happening with the fairgrounds? Because they were going to try to sell that at one time, and I'm thinking
a number of years ago, Claire, they got rezoned. They have what in the city is called a sketch plan, which is like a concept plan that shows, you know, a bunch of housing and some office uses and some retail uses, but they haven't gone anywhere. The nonprofit agricultural reserve, which owns it, you know, hasn't moved at all on that plan. And while I can't, you know, definitively state anything, I'm not intimately involved with them on a daily basis. My understanding is, while they may be amenable to selling that site, they're not amenable to selling that site if they don't have someplace to go.
because that's one of my concerns is what we're talking about with Lakeforest could all be either negated or enhanced by what happens with that huge parcel of land as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's very fair. From staff's perspective, we obviously acknowledge for all of Frederick Avenue, especially, you know, for the northern part, the importance both of Lakeforest Mall and the Fairgrounds. So any other thoughts on this question? Again, I know this was sort of a toughie, more esoteric one, but I think you guys have touched on a lot of themes that have, or ways in which, you know, we can continue to support diversity, be it through the various jobs or amenities offered, or, you know, we just touched on briefly, even though we are as a panel downplaying, you know, the residential component, but if there is one, that housing affordability is an issue, obviously. But again, green space can help promote this. So does anybody else have any parting thoughts before we move on to question 3? And I will take that deafeningly silence as no. Rob, move on to question 3. So I think, you know, for this question, the first part, what would you consider a successful redevelopment project? In many ways, I think we've touched on the components of that, but it's the second part of this question, you know, how long should we wait, or how long would you wait to achieve this success? So another way to think of this is, you know, given the timeline, we'll probably have a master plan adopted next August. So how long should we wait before something begins to happen? Is it, you know, 1 year or 10 years? And by the same token, you know, how long do you think overall this project, you know, to achieve the ultimate vision, how long could that take? Or conversely, how long would you be willing to wait before you go, hey, you know, it was a great vision or it was great elements, but obviously it's not working out. It's time to relook at things. So This back part again is sort of, how long do you think it should take to begin to see something occur? How long do you think we should wait before it's time to, potentially reassess? Or if you don't think we, need to reassess, how long do you think the whole project should take to be done?
I think I'd like to see something rubber stamped within like a year and a half at the bare minimum, because I know this has been a constant thing for years. So just, I guess I'm more so focused on the decision more so than the actual implementation of the decision. And that's kind of
So
where I'm
when you
at
say
right
rubber
now.
stamp, do you mean, what exactly do you mean by that, Ronnie? Do you mean approval? Because the master plan
Yes.
will be, adopted next August.
Oh, okay. Okay. So well, that answers that
So
question.
we're really
there,
talking about, so let's assume next August we have a master plan. When do you think is realistic to see some sort of traction towards moving towards actualizing that master plan?
I guess I'll
And
try to
again,
use it. Yeah.
an interested developer.
I'm trying
Personally,
to be,
yeah.
I am trying to be realistic here. So I think a couple of years.
Okay. Ronnie, I know you were getting ready to,
Oh yeah, I guess I have another personal anecdote. So I got lucky and found a position here in Gaithersburg off Shady Grove. I was commuting basically the Tyson's Corner area with a software development company. And prior to acquiring the job here, I was strongly contemplating leaving the area and moving over there, both for commuting purposes and knowing that the type of jobs that I'm going for are in that Tyson's Corner, Alexandria area. So I guess knowing that something like that may potentially happen here, I think maybe I'd personally, I guess from today, I'd like to see something within 2.5 to 3 years.
okay.
That puts me in the upper 30s. Maybe someone might lock me down. I might be in the process of starting a family. So, if within 3 years I don't see anything there, then I'm probably just moving, further close to DC, possibly into Virginia.
Gotcha. So I was waiting for somebody to throw out the magic number, and Ronnie did it. What we're hearing from a lot of focus groups, and this is not said in light to try to persuade you, but just to let you know where other focus groups' thoughts were. Many others felt there should be some sort of movement, some sort of traction within 3 to 5 years. Does that sound realistic, more or less to the group? We know Ronnie said 3 years. I believe, didn't we just hear from Levita, who was saying, hey, 2 to 3 years. So we're sort of in, they're in that corner. Where do the other three think? Is 3 to 5 years realistic? Or would you want to see some sort of movement quicker? Or, are you more patient?
I don't see any reason to wait.
Yeah, I agree. Sooner the better.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of market driven. I had a chance. It was a great experience to participate on the Montgomery Village 2020 plan development.
Mm-hmm.
And no sooner than we got the plan approved and all of that, and just started to take a breath from all of the work that had gone into it, there was interest in developing in a redevelopment or new housing, and things just jumped from there. Now it's been a long kind of arduous process from that point on, but it's happening. It's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it also kind of depends on what the market is looking like too. Who is in a place where they can make that investment.
So Linda, and I guess for the group, talking about markets. So we've talked about a lot of things. So if we do this master plan and we have this overriding vision, and we've expressed, specific elements that relate to that vision. If the market presents a short-term win, should the city, just take that, or should they hold out to try to get to this grander vision?
Yeah, that to me would make the difference in terms of what that short-term interest was. I I know somebody mentioned having things moving in the direction of just having a lot of strip malls. And I mean, I don't think going into something like that would make sense if you were going for a bigger picture. And if you're talking about the kind of development that you want to be, nobody wants to use upscale. I don't know what's between, the drive-through and the upscale, but just sit down restaurants, something like that. But I think, I mean, it's interesting, but I think that the sector or what kind of small piece it might represent is like really important in terms of making that decision.
Okay, that is totally fair. Anybody else? Cherie, I see you unmuted.
Yes, I am. So I'm thinking maybe this is totally removed and totally, I don't even know if it's even appropriate to say, but I think about the 270 reconstruction of that highway and it's taken forever. It's very demoralizing and it's just like, when is this going to end? So I don't know if, obviously we want some action to happen sooner the better, but we want to be careful to not rush things either. And so to keep that happy medium between, hey, we do want to see some action. Not only that, it kind of brings up the morale of the community to see, hey, something's actually happening here, but then we don't want to drag out either. And then, I would hate to say this, but the longer the project takes, the more holes and more deterrences can occur if you drag it out longer. So I think we just have to be aware of that when we are, if this ever, when this does come to pass. Time means everything. People are watching, and when things are happening there, construction is going to be an issue. That means more traffic. We have to just be mindful of, the day-to-day, around this development in the time frame. So I just want to throw that out there.
No, you've expressed thoughts and concerns that have been raised by multiple groups, so you are not alone. But because they have given us some answers, I want to follow up with you. Given your concerns, do you see or do you believe it would be appropriate in the master plan to sort of set a timeline trigger for mandatory re-review? So just to way to phrase this is, should we put in something that, after 10 years, it's time to take a serious look at how much has been implemented and then go from there? Do you think that's appropriate?
I would say yes, real fast and be quiet, because I know how it goes. It does not need to be something that gets filed or put on a shelf and never gets revisited.
So Cherie, following up again, do you what do you think? Should we be building in, to voice your concerns about, starting then going stagnant for 4 years, for example?
I think it's always wise to have an evaluation built into anything on this scale, just to keep people accountable and to make sure that there are milestones that are being met. So it would be remiss to not have some kind of touch points. Did we meet this goal at this level at this time, and did we deliver? So yes, I think that would help with driving this project forward instead of having just this endless goal. And I think that's why for me, when I hear 3 to 5, 3 is, for me, I think is maximum. I think 5 years is might even be pushing it. So
okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So for this, let's call it, review time, do you think that should be at 5 years or 10 years or 15 years? Do you have any thoughts? And again, if you don't, I'm not trying to press you, put you on the spot to go, give me a time. But if you have a thought about what could be realistic.
So when you say evaluation, I'm not well versed in this.
No, so what I'm saying is, so let's say we approve a master plan in August, and within 3 years something begins to happen, and given for whatever reason, maybe there's not a lot of movement, after that. Again, instead of, if we say, for the most part, hey, we like this vision, but if the vision isn't coming to fruition, at what point potentially do we stop and say, let's sort of redo this exercise to see if the vision still holds true? Or if the vision holds true, is there something else that we did in the master plan that's not letting this move forward?
Mm-hmm. I mean, just off the top of my head, I would say at least some kind of annual review or some revisiting on an annual basis until, and I'm assuming this is going to be built in stages. So I would say at least annual, at least review. That doesn't mean you have to take action, but at least a review would be ideal, for something on the scale. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other thoughts from anyone? So again, we're talking timelines. When do you want to see, what is realistic? We all want to see stuff happen yesterday, but that's not, realistic. So what is realistic for something beginning? And, typically, the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, how many days would you be willing to wait to see Lakeforest redevelop? And, sort of what we were just following on with the conversation with Cherie. At what point, do you go, hey, it's time to relook at things altogether? From the lack of responses, what I've heard so far is everybody's more or less aligned with the 3-year thing. We want to see something start. We've heard that we should try to hold to the vision, but it should be a review, whether it's Cherie's annual or some other time period, just to track to make sure what is envisioned is somewhat realistic or meets overall goals. So anything else I'm missing here, folks?
I think we've covered a lot of stuff already.
Oh, we have. We've been talking for almost an hour and a half, so we've covered a lot of topics. I just want to make sure, before we begin winding this down, that, there's not something that we've missed that, for any of you guys, you go, wow, I really want to make sure this gets out. So, we can pivot away from question 3 and start working towards the windup. So just as I mentioned, is there something we haven't covered? We've talked about a lot of different things, but is there something else, you guys want to make sure we as planning staff, and, for this, this project, keep in mind?
I couldn't think of anything else.
Then I guess we had a really good discussion then. If nobody
We did. We sure did.
I think we covered a lot of stuff.
I think so, yes. I think this is very fruitful, yes.
And this is Cherie. Is it fair to ask if there's anything else that was mentioned in other panelists' discussions that we did not bring up, just in case there's anything we agree or disagree or just any thoughts that might come into our minds? Is there anything you're allowed to share with us? Or
I'm happy to share, but I'm not trying to skew you into a particular answer. So let me just frame it that way. And again, just so you know, all of our focus groups, summaries of all the discussions are posted on our project page, which I'll get to as we wind down. Some of the conversation, you guys have hit a lot on the common themes, the experiential and neighborhood scaled focus of retail. That was a common theme in many of the panels, various panels. The need for a green space, both programmed and unprogrammed, that serves a variety of ages. That's something that almost everybody touched upon. The role of the transit center and transportation in general and the concerns, that's something that, everybody else touched on. Some focus groups, you guys touched on the biotech, STEM, and medical components. That was touched on by a lot of groups. You guys did mention a venue. Some of the other focus groups, some discuss, and you guys aren't necessarily talking about housing, but in relationship to housing, some of the groups had discussed, will there be a need for an additional school site? So that's something that was discussed. Other groups have discussed, potentially some other uses, maybe non-traditional. So, trying to explore the educational world or job vocational world as opportunities on this site. That was other stuff, civic uses, neighborhood support uses. those were touched upon. But again, this, Cherie, this panel's done a great job. You guys hit on a bunch of different things. It's just, it all depends upon the composition of the group and who we're talking to, what their priorities are.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm always curious to hear what others say, because sometimes it just spurs more thoughts. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
The connectivity you guys tapped on from the very beginning. A lot of the other focus groups talked about that importance, and to sort of building upon, the discussion, Ronnie and others made, it's not just the connectivity, immediately across Russell Avenue or something like that, but even trying to improve connectivity, all the way out to Hidden Creek or down into Old Town. So, that sort of importance to sort of, expand the influence of a redevelopment on, to be more than just the immediate half mile around it.
That's great.
So I've thrown some more stuff out. Anybody have anything? Otherwise, we'll begin winding it down. But I want to give you guys a chance if you have any parting thoughts or if there's anything else you want to explore. Now is the time. We're an hour and a half in. I promised I wouldn't keep you beyond 2 hours. So again, I think by the quiet, we can start moving towards the end. So I want to tell you guys where we are in the process. So the engagement aspect of this effort ends tomorrow. And then after that, there's some important dates for you to keep in mind. December 14th, staff will be conducting a joint work session with the Mayor and City Council and the Planning Commission. And during that work session, we're going to be presenting all the findings. So we're going to be talking about all the results of our various surveys, all the input received during these public forums, all the input received during the focus group. So we're going to be giving that all to the Planning Commission and the Council. And then we'll be discussing, what those findings mean as it relates to city policies or goals. Staff may be making recommendations about with the upcoming master plan, the direction it should go. And we're hoping to receive direction at that meeting, what does the Planning Commission and the Mayor and City Council want to see in this master plan? So that's December 14th. After that, hopefully getting that guidance, we will begin spending a couple months actually writing the master plan. So our goal is to have a draft master plan for everybody to look at late February or early March. If you haven't been there, we do have a project page, gaithersburgmd.gov/Lakeforest. On this site, as I just sort of mentioned to Cherie, you can find tons of background demographic studies. You can find various reports. You can find the summaries for all of the focus group meetings. You'll be able to view the results of the survey. And the survey is still up until noon tomorrow. So if you haven't taken the survey, please do. This project page is going to remain up for the next, 8 months, the life cycle of this master plan. So that's going to be the place to go. If you go, hey, is there a meeting coming up? Or something along those lines, that's going to be your point. If after this something strikes you and you're sitting at the dinner table tonight and you're going, darn, I wish I'd asked Rob this question, you still can. We have a unique email address. It's lakeforestmp, all one word, lakeforestmp@gaithersburgmd.gov. Email your questions, email your comments to that email address. As I mentioned, while this aspect of engagement, the forums and the surveys is coming to a close, that does not mean your involvement ends. The joint work session is a public meeting. You should be able to speak there. We will be taking comments. The first step under state law of a master plan is when we issue the draft master plan, we give a 60-day comment period. So you'll have the ability to comment on the actual draft plan. The 60 days basically ends with a joint public hearing. So then we're going into a public hearing process where yet again, you get to stay engaged. So again, what I emphasize is please don't view this important effort as, I did my hour and a half, I'm done. I'd really like for you guys to stay engaged throughout this process. And that project page is a great living way to keep abreast of what's going on, what meetings are coming up, what comments are being issued by other people, just to stay on top of everything. So again, big dates, December 14th, first joint work session. Keep track of the project page. If you haven't taken the survey, it's up until noon tomorrow, so you still have time. And then please use our email address, lakeforestmp@gaithersburgmd.gov, to continue to stay engaged with questions or comments. And with that, I really appreciate all you guys giving us some time here. I appreciate how thoughtful you were and candid you were with your answers. It's helpful to us to hear this diversity of viewpoints. And I really appreciate, especially sometimes in this era, the decorum and the way you were respectful to one another and to me as we went through this process. So one last time, I'll give everybody a chance for any parting words or thoughts, but then otherwise we will go ahead and end this forum. And again, I appreciate you guys giving the time.
Well,
I just want to
to
say
everybody.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you at the same time.
Same here, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for having this conversation, and just it's nice to hear different voices other than work. So I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Cool. Anybody else?
Thank you also for me. Yeah.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah,
Lavita.
thank you.
Ronnie, I'm going to give you the last word, my friend. Any thoughts, any parting thoughts?
No, just thank you for holding this. It's rare to be able to put in so much input. It seems like a lot of decisions lately are just made, in contrast to what the local community wants. So thank you for this.
Oh, not a problem. And again, I really appreciate it. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thank you again for your participation. And again, one last time, stay involved.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.